It's episode 8 of Business and Leadership Stories. It is something, an idea that was trashed out by Sachin Bhandary from The Story Co. and yours truly, and of course his colleague Ranjani Subramanian. And week after week, we come to you with business stories, stories that have actually played out in India Inc. or otherwise, and the leadership and communication lessons that we can learn from those stories. The Story Co. is helping communities, companies, startups, professionals break the culture of MBA speak, use the power of stories to achieve their business goals with speed and ease. And they do this via coaching, consulting, and training. And we will hear about that later on the show. Sachin joins me. What's up? How are you?
I'm very good, Rishi. I'm very good.
Well, today's story is about Vineeta Singh, and I remember meeting Vineeta Singh at the pre-launch interview sessions for Shark Tank.
hmm
She was very, very gracious enough to immediately come say, "I'm Vineeta. I love your voice. I listen to you every single morning when I'm driving." And she said, she didn't need to say this, but she said it was a lucky day because she had met Mr. Bachchan on the KBC set that particular week, and now she was meeting me, both people she
Okay.
admired. I said, "Vineeta, you can't compare me with a great man, but I'm just glad to be able to make your mornings." So, Sachin, the story about Vineeta Singh from Sugar Cosmetics, one of the mentors, the judges on Shark Tank.
Right, right. Okay, I'm going to get into the story. Before that, with your permission, Rishi, I'm going to take a small detour because you mentioned about what Vinita Singh feels about said about you, right? I think some of your listeners also deserve to know that my company, in a way, some credit to the company forming and having a team goes to you as well, right? When we were doing the tidbits of conversations from Colombia and other South American countries when I was traveling back in 2015. And then later we did an interview about Russia when I went there with my mother and I took the Trans-Siberian. And that's when I got introduced to Ranjani, who was a listener of your show. And because I had gone to Russia and before that she had heard me speaking about South America, she decided to get in touch with me. I helped her with her Russia trip with some tips and all of that. And we continued to stay in touch. And voila, in 2019, we decided to start working together. And we've been working together now for what, 4 years? In fact, our partnership precedes the Storyco, Ranjani and my partnership, and I think you had a pivotal role to play in that. So you're not just the man with the golden voice; you also are the man who's making golden connections, Rishi. So through
That's
your show.
very, very kind of you, my friend.
Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead and dive into the wonderful story.
So Vineeta Singh is somebody that I got introduced to back in 2020 after I started the Storyco. I was looking to network with startup founders and the startup community, and happened to stumble upon an event called Freshworks with startups, which is by this company Freshworks, which is a SaaS company now listed on Nasdaq from India. And they had a lot of sessions in that day, and there were legends speaking at the event. There was Mike Moritz, Girish Mathrubootham, who himself has a great following, and many other folks were speaking, and of course they were all great. But there was one session that stood out for me, even from a title perspective. It said running the success marathon, and I was a bit curious because it wasn't like raising capital, it wasn't about 3xing your revenue, and all those terms that that have gotten associated with startups. And I was curious, so I attended the event, and I heard this young woman speak, a very, very good speaker. But what was more interesting was the way she narrated the entire presentation. She had one important message to deliver, and that message was that, as a startup founder, as an entrepreneur, I think it's also applicable to a lot of leaders and professionals in everyday lives or in career, is that we feel scared about doing some things, right? And more often than not, we shy away from doing those things because we are scared, of course. And she wanted to drive home the message that the fear that you feel sometimes is the one that you have to confront, and you have to use that as the way to grow your company, because that's what you're supposed to do to make some progress. But she did not resort to an Excel file or numbers and all that. She narrated a story instead, and it's so fascinating that I remember so many parts of the story till today, and I use it in my workshops as well, in corporate workshops. So she says that she attempted her first Ironman, where you have to run the marathon cycling, which was easy. I mean, which was relatively easy for her. But the most difficult challenge was to swim. Now, she had trained to swim, and she was always training in, much like most of us, in swimming pools in a city like Bombay, right? But when she went to Austria and she started swimming in the lake, she realized that she was swimming in open waters for the first time. And every time she would put her head inside while swimming into the water, she could not spot the bottom of the lake. And that was freaking her out. She was really scared. And the rescue team would always come because she was panicking sometimes and all of that. And she would always tell the rescue team, hey, I'm going to try for a little more. And if I can't, then I will abandon the attempt. Now, kudos to her that despite all of the fear, she actually completed the attempt successfully. But when she got out and she completed the attempt, she realized that she was super scared of open waters, and she came back to Bombay and then started training in the Arabian Sea and no longer in the swimming pool. And she said that fear, and you probably have heard this, that when you feel fear, there are two ways to react to it. Thinking that it's fear, so it paralyzes you, or using that as excitement to be able to go forward. I'm someone like you who does a lot of public speaking even for a living. I'm sure that even today sometimes you do feel some butterflies. True. And you got to overcome them, because that's where the joy and everything else lies. So she said that you use the fear that you feel to be able to build your startup as well. And it was such a fascinating message, delivered with such a beautiful story, that it stays with me even to date. And I'm sure it stayed with a lot of other people who were attending the session. So yeah, kudos to her. And I say this also, that the reason why she got on Shark Tank, a lot of people say that, oh, she got on Shark Tank and now she can narrate her story to the world. I think it's the other way around. She actually got on Shark Tank because she was already good with her stories and storytelling. And of course, the Shark Tank team identifies that, and they know that they need people who are great at storytelling. And that's why she's now gotten this platform. So, 10 on 10, all the marks.
Incredible. That's incredible. What would be the business leadership and communication tip that we can learn from Vineeta Singh's extraordinary life?
Again, a very interesting story, and I think this is applicable in day-to-day presentations, in speeches, in conversations that we are having with team members, in sales, all of that. So if you are confronted with a topic which is slightly boring, slightly mundane, or sometimes even difficult or complex, you want to deliver a certain message, right? Like, for instance, I want to deliver a message that the StoryCo is a great training and coaching company. So if I just keep on saying that we are a great training and coaching company, we have done we've done work with 30 corporates, we have worked with 60 startups and all of that, I'm rattling out assertions one after the other. But rather than that, how Vineeta Singh did, if I'm able to wrap this around a story that we are a great training and coaching company, but hey, I'm not going to say that. Let me show and not tell by narrating a story. So if I narrate a story of how Tata Motors' corporate communications team, we were able to help them get more earned media PR and spot and structure more feature stories from within the company, which delivers the messaging of the company really well. That's a story that people want to hear and they want to know more. So stories pull you in, right? But the communication tip is that if you have a message to deliver, and if your subject is complex, difficult, boring sometimes, think of how you can use a fascinating, interesting story, whether your personal life story or a cricket story or a Bollywood story or a football story, or a story of a radio show or something like that, and deliver your message so that it becomes more palatable for the audience. Because at the end of the day, what you want them to understand your message. Now, what tool you use to understand the message, then you have to pick up the tool that's the most interesting, and stories are the most interesting tool in communication, in my opinion.
Sachin Bhandary writes this incredible newsletter called the Win With Stories newsletter. You can read it on LinkedIn. Where can we reach out to you as well as the StoryCo, please?
Yes, Hrishi. So I write 5 out of 7 days on LinkedIn with business and communication tips, share all of these things on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn profile also has link to my newsletter called Win With Stories. So any of the listeners who want to look for me, you can look for me by typing Sachin. That's easy. Bhandary is Bhandary and not I. Yes, that's that.
See you next week, my friend. Cheers.
Looking forward, Hrishi. Bye-bye.
94.3 Radio 1.